This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. 4 Winnipeg neighborhoods are set to try out lower speed limits. A long-awaited pilot project is about to begin. As CBC's Cameron McLean reports, advocates hope it shows the safety benefits of driving slowly.
Boris.
Ainsley O'Hare lives in the Burkevale neighborhood. She's happy the city of Winnipeg chose her area as part of a project to test out lower speed limits for vehicles.
I think for this neighborhood, it's would work good because there's a lot of kids and a lot of dogs, and we've had a couple near misses with some cars that are just going way too fast for a residential area.
The project will lower speeds to 30 kilometers per hour in Burkevale and in Tyndall Park South. The neighborhoods of Worthington and Richmond West will lower their speeds to 40 kilometers.
Joanne McLeod goes back on her run.
It's an idea many people in Burkevale have called for.
I work in the Assiniboine Children's Center, so I'm out here every day on my break, so I feel safer, but with the kids, it needs to be. Yeah. It needs to be.
Not everyone in the neighborhood supports the plan.
I don't see a reason for it currently if there was a problem, but this is a solution looking for a problem.
The Public Works Committee unanimously approved a bylaw today setting the lower speeds, despite objections from one councillor.
I hear from residents and people complain about, speeding on residential streets. In my opinion, the issue isn't the set speed limit, it's imprudent drivers. They're the ones that really need to be addressed.
Committee Chair Janice Lukes wasn't swayed by that argument.
In Richmond West, there's very few sidewalks. People walk on the streets, lots of kids, lots of action with schools nearby, and reducing the speed does make a difference from a neighborhood livability perspective.
But it'll have a really big impact on people that want to walk and ride the
This
bikes.
advocate hopes the lower speeds encourage more people to get out and share the roads.
We know that it's a necessary tool in our toolbox to make our neighborhoods more walkable and more bikeable for people to be making local trips. I would like to see a more widespread pilot being done citywide.
The lower speeds here in Burkevale and 3 other neighborhoods will go into effect later this spring and last for 1 year. A final report on the project is expected to go to council in fall of 2024. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, from slowdowns in driving to stoppages in flying. Now, the latest trouble with winter air travel. Sunwing's decision to cancel all flights out of Saskatchewan until February 3rd has many of our prairie neighbors heading here to Winnipeg to try and catch a flight. It's costly, and some say it's just not right. CBC's Stephanie Cram brings us the story.
Days before Lisa Adams Cranbill and her family were supposed to fly to sunny Cuba from Regina in early January, she started to hear rumors that their trip was canceled.
I thought it was a scam, only because Sunwing website still had our flight there. I phoned Sunwing. They had no idea what I was talking about.
She did eventually receive confirmation the trip was canceled. Sunwing offered a new date for her vacation. That didn't work for her family, so they received a full refund.
I can see people online, I'm following online, that people haven't even received their refund yet, so I don't know why ours was so fast, but I'm grateful that it was.
Adams Cranbill says her family still wanted to take a trip to Cuba, so they booked a new vacation again through Sunwing, this time flying out of Winnipeg later this month.
I did ask when they offered the Winnipeg flight, I said, well, will you pay the gas to get to Winnipeg? And they said no. So it's all basically out of pocket. If we still want to go, it's our choice, right?
A passenger rights advocate says Sunwing is breaching contracts with passengers and that they should pay for any additional costs for rebooking trips, whether through Sunwing or another airline.
There's nothing other than financial considerations to prevent Sunwing from transporting the passengers, or for that matter, buying them tickets on other airlines. A contract is a contract.
Some passengers out of Saskatchewan are planning to file a class action lawsuit against Sunwing. Lukash says that will be a long process. He hopes that Sunwing comes around before then.
It should be made clear to everybody in Canada, airlines and any other corporations, that this is not a way to do business in Canada. It won't be tolerated.
CBC reached out to Sunwing for comment, but haven't heard back. Stephanie Cram, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Winnipeg-based bus manufacturing company is laying off 30 employees in the wake of a number of financial hurdles. A spokesperson for New Flyer Industries says a drop in demand for buses due to the pandemic, supply chain problems, and inflation all contributed to the need for layoffs. But the company hopes these layoffs will be temporary. Last month, the province announced a $50 million loan for the company to help weather problems, and New Flyer says it hopes that money will help it get back on track. Métis Manitobans are calling for their identification cards to be accepted as legal identification. With a growing 47,000 Métis citizens, people say it's time. The CBC's Joanne Roberts explains.
This is Holly Pluff's Manitoba Métis card.
It's my identification as a Métis citizen that was issued by the Manitoba Métis Federation.
She uses it as a primary form of identification. She found out over the holidays many places, like the Liquor Mart, don't accept it.
The lady asked me for a form of ID, and I produced my Manitoba Métis Federation card, and she said no. She said it has to be a government-issued card. And I said, it is.
The Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries Corporation accepts different forms of ID. It needs a photo and proof of age. The MMF card has both. When her card wasn't accepted, Pluff says she was shocked. Even though she has other forms of ID, she says it's important the card is recognized officially, and accepting it means accepting her as a Métis citizen.
I've been not identifying as a Métis person for all of my life, or until I got this card. So now I identify as I should be as a Métis person.
David Chartrand is the president of the MMF. He's frustrated the card isn't universally accepted as a form of ID. It causes problems for our citizens. For some, the Métis card is the only photo ID they're able to get.
A lot of elders don't have driver's license, so how they come into a store somewhere and show their ID, or to a bank, and they don't have no picture ID.
Chartrand says he's in discussions with all levels of government. He's advocating for them to recognize the Métis identification, just like the Secure Certificate of Indian status is recognized.
So without question, there should be no hesitation to acknowledge and recognize these cards as official identification.
I am a Métis citizen. This is my identification.
A Métis card is an accepted form of ID by Elections Canada, but it's not accepted as government-issued ID by the province. The Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Authority of Manitoba says it's thinking about including other forms of ID in the future. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And yes, Manitoba Liquor and Lottery says its accepted IDs, the list of them is based on requirements it receives from the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Authority, and it also says it is working to have the Métis card included as an accepted form of identification at liquor marts. Hockey fans piled into the Canada Life Centre last night. As you saw here live, the Ukrainian national team was in Winnipeg for a special game against the University of Manitoba Bisons. It was part of the Can't Stop Hockey Tour, which visited 4 Canadian cities. Its goal was to raise money to train players from Ukraine and also help with humanitarian efforts in the war-torn country. Thousands of Ukrainian fans were at Canada Life Centre last night to cheer on their team.
It's very nice for our country because now it's very terrible years, months for us, and that's why we are very happy that you, as a Canadian country, help us so much. Thank you very much.
It just kind of shows that pride of being Ukrainian, and so that even in the midst of tragedy, we can still have something to cheer about.
So nice, so organized, so many help from, not just from Canada, Winnipeg, from around the world. I want to say thank you to everybody.
The Ukrainian team beat the University of Manitoba 5-1. Next, the Ukrainians head to the Winter University Games in Lake Placid, New York, which start January 11th. That's tomorrow, January 11th.
I can't believe it.
It's tomorrow.
This month is just whizzing by. Now, yesterday, Janet, you and I talked about the National Day being Static Shock Day.
Right, I could use that. I have so much static electricity in my hair.
Today is National Conserve Energy Day.
Perfect.
costs.
Now you tell me.
I know.
The day is mostly
It's over.
I could have been loafing this whole day.
What, loafing?
Well, conserve energy. Oh, you meant electricity. I was thinking, take it chill.
Take it chill. I'm gonna loaf over to the green screen now. Let's take a look at our current conditions. We're sitting at -6 degrees with the wind chill is -12. We have a really light wind once again here in Winnipeg. This morning, boy, we had lots of blowing snow that made visibility difficult in those open exposed areas. We'll see the wind picking up tonight, but it won't be quite as dramatic. What is dramatic is what's happening as we're moving in an eastern direction. So we have a little bit of a low here. It's going to start moving towards that northwestern Ontario zone. This right here, as it moves east, we're going to see it starting to turn into freezing drizzle. That's going to be a problem. Now, it shouldn't be a factor for Winnipeg, but we are warming up. We've got a bit of warm air here. So we're going to see that low and that snow just drift right through Winnipeg, and that is going to bring us a dusting of snow overnight tonight. So looking around 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., that's when it's going to be in Winnipeg. So that's kind of good news because it'll be cold then. But as it moves east, you're going to see down there in that southeast corner of the province, a little pink. That means that that's where that freezing drizzle is going to be. So we're looking for cloud cover again tomorrow. We do see some sunshine coming our way thanks to a ridge of high pressure that moves through, clearing things out for a moment or two here on Thursday, but then that's quick, it's over. Don't even have your sunglasses out. It's just going to be super cloudy. We do have a little bit of snow, a little skiff of snow coming towards Winnipeg and then the surrounding area. It's not a lot, just about 1 centimeter of snow. That's, as I mentioned, overnight tonight. So looking for about 1 centimeter there, and so that's not going to be a big, huge deal. That starts after midnight. So we're looking for -6 at midnight with some light flurries, a light wind, so not a big deal. Not ruling out a little bit of morning fog for you. So -8 once we get going in the morning. And then around lunchtime, the fog will disappear. We could see a bit of sunshine and -7 degrees. Our 3-day forecast looks like this: -9, -8, and -5. So pretty warm way to end the week. And Janet, I got to show you this picture. I love this. Jayla sent this in, and at first I was like, whatever. But here's the thing that she captioned this. She goes, when you look at this snow, does it not make you think of cookies and cream ice cream?
She's right. She's totally right.
I can't unsee it now.
Fiona Odlum, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll check in with Fiona again for her Manitoba forecast in just a little while. Does the name Dr. Jean Augustine sound familiar to you? She was the first Black woman elected as a member of Parliament in Canada. It was her motion in 1995 that led to February being recognized as Black History Month in Canada. Dwayne D.O. Gibson is a Canadian rapper who thinks every Canadian should know the names of Dr. Augustine and other great Black Canadians. For years now, he's been traveling to schools in different parts of the country, teaching about Black Canadian history. I spoke with him about that this afternoon. D.O. Gibson, thank you for joining us.
Oh, yeah. Great to be here.
Tell me what the D.O. stands for.
D.O. stands for Defy the Odds, because my first rap name was D.O.G. As a homage to Snoop Dogg, but I really realized I wanted my name to mean something. I think as an artist, especially a rapper, you want your name to mean something and to stand for something. So especially because I do so many school presentations, Defy the Odds is something that every kid can relate to, every adult as well, that we're all just trying to defy the odds.
Why is it that you started doing these school tours? What are you so passionate about?
I come from a family of educators, so people always thought I was going to go into teaching. I went to university and graduated with an English degree, but I had the opportunity to come into a few different classrooms of friends that were teachers, and I just really connected well with students, and I realized that hip-hop is a great tool to educate youth. So I've had a blast going to over 3,000 schools nowadays and being able to talk hip-hop, but being able to deliver a solid message as well.
Which is what?
Well, it's to defy the odds, it's to stay driven and persevere. And then I focus on 3 things. I focus on anti-bullying, on leadership, and then right now it's Black Canadian history.
Why Black Canadian history? Why do you think it's important to teach our kids about Black Canadian history?
I'm a sixth generation Black Canadian, but the thing for me is when I started going to the schools up until just a couple of years ago, I've been doing it for 20 years, and every school I would go into, they would talk about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, and that was it. So every year it was the same thing, and I thought it was important to get across Canadian Black history. My family, half of them come from Nova Scotia. The other side comes from Saskatchewan, so right near Winnipeg. But the stories of Black history in Nova Scotia, I think, are relevant to all Canadians, whether we're talking about Viola Desmond on a $10 bill, whether we're talking about the Colored Hockey League, or whether we're talking about Africville. And it's been great to educate young Canadians about Canadian history.
How receptive are the kids to these stories?
Kids are always great. Sometimes people wonder, being that I'm based in Toronto, if my presentations will work in maybe a rural community or a place where students aren't as racialized. But I find it doesn't matter where you go across this country, that people really latch on to what I'm talking about, because besides history, they're really good stories. You know, when I talk about Viola Desmond and I talk about how she was in a movie theater, it doesn't matter if you're a kid who's 4 years old, you love going to the movies. And I talk about getting popcorn and getting ready for the movie. But then I say, has anybody ever told you to move from where you're sitting? And to me, that's where it really sinks in, that that kid who might not know what segregation means can understand, I've never been to a movie and had somebody tell me to move. So I think it's really just kids are able to connect with those lessons.
I watched a video of yours today for a song called One Woman Can Change the World. And there's a kid in that video, your daughter. What do you hope changes for her?
Well, it was so much fun shooting that video because in the part of the video, she's holding up a picture of my grandmother. And to me, that shows the different generations. And so to bring it back to Viola Desmond, a lot of people learn about how she stood up by sitting down at a movie theater. But I also want kids to know that Viola Desmond was an entrepreneur. The whole reason she was at that movie theater is because she was on a business trip. She was refused being able to go to school to be a beautician in Halifax. So she had to go to school in New York City under the first Black female millionaire, Madam C.J. Walker. So I want my daughter to learn that people in the past, whether it's my aunts or grandmothers or cousins, have helped pave the way for her to achieve her dreams and be anything she wants to be.
And change the world.
And change the world.
Dio Gibson, thank you so much for your time today. Great chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
Ukraine says Russian forces have been aggressively attacking its positions around the city of Bakhmut. What it's costing Russian soldiers after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Ukraine reports Russian forces have been aggressively attacking positions around the city of Bakhmut. It's part of the Kremlin's renewed effort to gain control of the eastern Donetsk province, a goal that's costing it the lives of hundreds of Russian soldiers. Chris Brown reports.
Soledar, a town known for mining salt and not much else, is a wasteland, pummeled unrelentingly by Russian artillery. But Russia's army is treating it as a prize worth sacrificing thousands of lives for. From the Ukrainian side, this infantryman swears and says the noise of the battle is unbearable. Russian troops have purportedly been crawling over the corpses of their own to reach the dug-in Ukrainian positions. The orcs, as the Ukrainians call them, are creeping in, said the Ukrainian gunner. We get positions from our drones and fry them. This video on social media shows Russian soldiers in Soledar appearing to confirm earlier reports from the British Defense Ministry that the town is largely under Russian control. Earlier, President Volodymyr Zelensky framed Soledar's defense as a victory for Ukrainian resilience. We bought important additional time and additional strength for our military, he said. For Russia, seizing Soledar tightens the noose around the bigger prize, the city of Bakhmut to the south. Mercenaries from the Wagner paramilitary group, which include thousands of conscripted Russian criminals, have been assaulting the city for months. Russia's army mobilized 300,000 men this fall, which has changed the battlefield dynamics.
One thing it did do very effectively was plug holes in their front line.
This British military expert says Russia may be running short on ammunition, which could strain its ability to mount new offensives.
So the indication are the Russians are getting worried. Certainly the rate of fire that they're putting down now is nowhere near what they were putting down in the summer.
After being stopped here in Kyiv, outside of Kharkiv, and driven from Kherson, Russia's military seemed in disarray. But at the very least, Soledar is a powerful reminder that its army should not be underestimated. Chris Brown, CBC News, Kyiv.
The North American Leaders Summit kicked off today in Mexico City. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is playing host to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and also to U.S. President Joe Biden. David Cochran has this report now from Mexico City.
A one-on-one with the U.S. president before the broader summit begins.
What we should be doing, and we are doing, is demonstrating the unlimited economic potential that we have when we work together.
A chance to discuss economic cooperation, but also a moment for new pledges on the crisis of the moment. Canada has agreed to buy a U.S.-made air defense system to send to Ukraine, answering the pleas of Volodymyr Zelensky, whose country faces seemingly endless Russian bombardment from above.
You and I have been working so closely on significant global issues, whether it's the pressures of China and Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the need to continue to stand up strong for democracy.
The two countries have also found a resolution to the problems plaguing the Nexus program, which speeds up travel across the Canada-U.S. border. The way the program operates will change, but processing offices will reopen and the backlog of applications will be sorted. The broader summit is focusing heavily on economic cooperation, fueled by a shared strategic appetite to reduce the reliance on countries such as China in critical sectors. The three leaders plotting a course to build out continental supply chains in key areas such as semiconductors, electric vehicles, and critical minerals. This was the Prime Minister's first face-to-face meeting with the U.S. President of the new year. A second is set for just 2 months from now, as Joe Biden has accepted an invitation to visit Canada in March. David Cochran, CBC News, Mexico City.
A spokeswoman for the UN human rights chief says the Iranian regime is using the death penalty as a means to crush protests.
Criminal proceedings and the death penalty are being weaponized by the Iranian government to punish individuals participating in protests and to strike fear into the population to stamp out dissent in violation of international human rights law.
The UN Human Rights Agency says such executions amount to state-sanctioned killing. Iran has resorted to brutal crackdowns on anti-government protesters. Despite international outcry, at least 4 people have been executed since the demonstrations began in September. Amnesty International says the Iranian authorities are considering more executions using what it calls sham trials. Prince Harry's memoir, titled Spare, is now the fastest-selling nonfiction book in the United Kingdom ever, according to its publisher. This highly anticipated account of his life as a royal and his split from the family was officially released today. CBC's Abby Kubavasan reports now from London.
No massive lines outside bookstores like this one, but that doesn't mean Prince Harry's memoir isn't doing well. The online sales really telling the tale. Waterstones says that Spare is its biggest pre-order in a decade, and the book is already a #1 bestseller on Amazon UK. Some people who came out of the bookstore, book in hand, said they're looking forward to hearing the story of Prince Harry from the man himself. Others weren't very impressed.
A lot of the British people just miss that old Harry. We want our happy Harry back, you know? So I won't be reading it.
I'm going on holiday with some friends. I thought, what better present can I give the group than a book on Harry?
I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to read what he's got to say.
He's come out of the institution, stay out of it, earn a living a different way, you know?
To leave the family and to leave their country, I want to know in his words, why?
Now, we've heard about some of the major revelations in recent days, but the book does provide some context. He shares stories about his family. One of the major themes is grief. He says that after the death of his mother, he had a hard time coming to terms with it, that for years he believed she would make a triumphant return or that he would see her on the street. He also talks about his sibling rivalry with his brother, Prince William, and how that morphed into something bigger as the years went on, and he made sure to highlight the fact that it didn't start with Meghan. Now, Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace have not yet commented on this book, just as they didn't comment after the release of the Netflix special. Royal commentators believe that the family is hoping that all of this will blow over before the king is crowned at his coronation in May. Abby Kubavasan, CBC News, London.
China launched its first retaliation today against countries that are now demanding COVID-19 tests from Chinese travelers. Beijing announced it is suspending issuing visas in South Korea and also Japan. It says that could change if the test requirements were dropped. Several countries, including Canada, now require the tests following an alarming recent spread in China of COVID-19. Also today, the World Health Organization said countries should consider recommending masks on long-haul flights. It's a response to this latest subvariant, which is now rapidly spreading in the United States. A man who says he developed a severe skin condition after receiving a COVID-19 vaccine says he can't get the medical help he needs. He developed a painful blistering rash on his hand and also on parts of his body after getting Moderna shots in the summer of 2021. And he says it's destroyed his life. CBC's Alastair Steele has a story.
The pain I was in, it's you cannot imagine it.
Tasir Otabachi says the painful rash that appeared days after he received the Moderna vaccine has made the last year and a half torture.
I'm done, no work, I cannot even wash my body, my normal life has been destroyed, totally destroyed.
Fatima Udalab says it's been heartbreaking to watch her husband suffer.
I really feel sorry for that because he does not deserve it. He's a great dad, he's a great husband.
Unable to find a doctor in his home province, Otabachi turned to Ontario, where he faced a new hurdle, convincing anyone that his condition was linked to the vaccine. Instead, he was prescribed a series of medications, none of which worked.
The doctors actually that I've been to, they were very worried and scared to mention or say, my condition, my medical condition is because of the COVID vaccine.
Earl Brown, a professor emeritus of virology at the University of Ottawa, says that caution among doctors is understandable, given the sensitivity of the topic.
Sometimes they don't know what caused it, and so they don't feel they can associate it with the vaccine. But you have to be careful you don't rule things out when you have no reason to rule them out.
Last summer, Ottawa allergist Anthony Hampong examined Otabachi and provided him with this letter confirming a temporal relationship between his vaccination and the sudden appearance of his skin condition. Armed with that letter, Otabachi has tried applying for compensation under Quebec's vaccine injury program, but was recently informed that he needs confirmation from a doctor in that province, setting him back to square one. In recent weeks, a drug called Dupixent has helped improve Otabachi's condition considerably, but at $30,000 a year, there's no way he can afford to keep taking it after the free samples run out. Now he's exploring treatment options overseas.
Here, actually, I feel I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting my health, I'm wasting my body, and it's a hopeless case.
Alistair Steele, CBC News, Ottawa.
Fiona Odlum is in after the break with her look at the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. 2 hydrogen-powered buses will soon be hitting the roads in Edmonton. The city of Winnipeg has also just ordered some. If Edmonton's trial proves these fuel cells can be recharged quickly and continue to run in extreme weather conditions, there would then be high hopes for future applications. Julia Wong reports.
This Edmonton transit bus looks and feels like your average bus, but there's one major difference. It's powered by hydrogen.
There's no engine, there's no transmission.
This big black fuel cell uses hydrogen and oxygen to create energy to drive the bus. There are 0 emissions. The byproducts, heat and water.
These are ways for us to have sustainable fuel, really look at climate action, and put a big punch into that.
For 1 year, the city will track how the bus handles distances and Alberta's extreme temperatures.
It's certainly part of our desire to be emissions neutral by 2050.
On a full tank, this bus would be able to run between 300 and 480 kilometers, the same as a regular diesel bus.
Hydrogen is on fire right now globally.
Brian Helfenbaum says $500 billion of hydrogen projects have been announced worldwide in the last few years. Alberta has vast reserves of natural gas, which can be converted into hydrogen. The province is aiming to become a hydrogen hub.
We already have the technologies in place to make it, to move it, and to use it. Ultimately, hydrogen could supply essentially all of our heavy haul vehicles and our trains and our ships and our planes.
12 years ago, BC scrapped 20 hydrogen buses because of costs. Experts say the technology has matured. Safety has also been addressed over the years, and the time is now ripe.
In Canada, we have about 4,000 people currently employed in the clean hydrogen sector. We expect to see that to grow by orders of magnitude as we're able to displace more polluting forms of energy.
If things go well with the pilot, there's potential to transition the bus fleet and perhaps an identity.
Changing that concept of oil country to a sustainable fuel is something, people don't often get an opportunity to kind of be a part of. And it starts with one bus, but we're looking at many things beyond that.
And all that starts when the hydrogen buses hit the road in February. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Not much relief in sight for millions of Californians who right now are dealing with relentless rain from back-to-back storms. The constant downpour is coming after already water-saturated areas have left roads and neighborhoods swamped. This weather has triggered mudslides and widespread flooding. High winds knocked out power for thousands of homes and businesses today. At least 14 people are known to have died in this string of storms that have been lashing the state since Boxing Day, and yet another storm is set to barrel into the Pacific coast tomorrow. Fiona Odlum joins us now. They've had such a string of bad weather, and ours has been so stable for a long time. I'm grateful.
Unusually stable, right?
Yes.
And we have to remember those atmospheric rivers, it was about 2 years ago that they just kept pummeling Vancouver over and over, right? And right now we are in a little sweet spot here in Manitoba. Don't tell. It's a little secret. A hot secret. Let's take a look at our current conditions around the province, where we're going to be seeing -6 in Selkirk. Usually our daytime high is -12 and our overnight lows are -24. So that is really unusual. -11 in St. Laurent. We're looking for -9 in Swan River, -9 in Dauphin, -6 in Barons River. You can see as we travel east, like into Sprague, it warms up. There's a lot of warmth as we go east. -13 in Churchill is even bizarre for me, where last week we were sitting into the -20s as our daytime highs. Tonight we're not going to actually cool down that much in Churchill. We do have this freezing drizzle advisory right now, though, for Ontario. This is what has been steady on our radar all day. So if you're traveling east, you are going to encounter a pocket of snow transitioning into rain, and that's going to be a real big problem fog is back on our radar. You can see even right here in Winnipeg right now where we do have limited visibility, but that's still manageable. We can do okay with that. But you can see there's moments in Melita where we get down to 3 kilometers. We see it popping all over the radar. So this is a very widespread situation, but really the worst of it is over towards that western portion. That's where we're seeing some of that moisture still lingering, and with the cooler temperatures, that's why we're going to get that fog. We didn't get the rime frost today, but we still did have the fog. We're looking for snow to be sweeping through God's Lake, Barons River, looking for about 1 centimeter to come through in towards the next 12 hours or so. And as we extend out into the 24 mark, we see just 1 centimeter of snow adding to Shamattawa and into the Churchill region. Towards the south, we see about 1 centimeter coming in overnight tonight. This is going to be in the real early hours into, say, Sioux Lookout. Don't forget that region is going to be all mixed precipitation. So definitely, again, a reminder to be careful. The wind, not a huge issue. We're not going to see those big gusts that we saw this morning that caused those problems with visibility, but it is on our radar as we look into Wednesday night into Thursday. So what we're going to be looking for in terms of our conditions tonight, we're looking for that chance of freezing drizzle, warm in that Kenora zone. We're looking for warmth as well through Winnipeg, -10, should be -24. We're going to be looking for some snow as well, and in towards the western region and into the northern zone. Just a light chance of snow coming towards us, Janet.
Thanks so much, Fiona.
You're welcome.
3D printed guns, look at them. All those made from a 3D printer. These things pose a growing threat across the country, including right here in Winnipeg. They can be made in secret, they can't be traced. We'll tell you why police are so worried after the break. The guns you see on the screen behind me were made with a 3D printer. Ellen Morrow investigates why police right across the country are warning about these ghost guns.
It's crazy that this becomes a full-out gun.
This will soon be a ghost gun. An untraceable firearm with no serial number anywhere on it. Homemade in just a few hours using a 3D printer.
Just these layer turns into a firearm.
Police across Canada are worried. They say these do-it-yourself weapons are a growing threat.
There's a flood of 3D guns entering into the city.
We contacted police forces across the country.
These guns are commonly referred to as ghost guns. None of them have serial numbers.
3D printing firearms is highly illegal. There is definitely underworld and a criminal element to it.
7 agencies, from large cities like Winnipeg to smaller ones like Sarnia, told us there was a jump, often a big one, in 3D printed gun seizures in 2022 over the previous year. More than 100 were seized nationwide. Calgary had one of the largest spikes. Police here seized 17 3D printed guns in 2022. The year before, just 1.
These guns can be 3D printed in someone's living room, in someone's bedroom, in someone's closet, without anyone knowing. These 2 firearms, we believe, were printed off of this machine. They're seized from
Acting
the same
Staff
warrant.
Sergeant Ben Lawson heads up Calgary's Firearms Investigative Unit.
This is a standard Glock style model, so the bottom part is all 3D printed, so the purple part, and then the silver and black parts are commercially made.
So someone would have printed this part on a 3D printer and then have gone to just a normal gun store and bought the metal pieces and put it together?
You bet, yeah.
So where there would be a serial number, there's just nothing.
Exactly.
The serial number is normally on the receiver or frame of a firearm, but that's the part that's 3D printed. Without that number, there's no way to trace these guns.
Why would someone print one of these?
Anything that they can do to make themselves more secret and more anonymous is probably more advantageous to the criminal. Anyone can go online, purchase a computer, a laptop for $100, they can buy this for $300, and now they can start printing firearms. You can 3D print a firearm, all parts for, say, $500, and the markup is astronomical. We can see them range anywhere from $2,500 to $7,500 in Canada.
There's a large and very active 3D printed gun community online.
The Glock 26X, the AR pistol. All right, let's crank some rounds out of this.
Creators showing off new designs to millions of followers.
I printed this beautiful blue frame.
And sharing exactly how to make them.
So this is the YouTube page for one of these gun designers. And down in the comments, they actually tell people exactly where they can go to find the information to be able to print one of these guns. It links me to another site where the files are all there to be able to be downloaded. So I pick the gun that I want to print, and right here, in just a few clicks, I'm able to download a guide and all the files and information to be able to print this weapon.
Actually printing a gun in Canada is illegal, but downloading these instruction manuals isn't. And anyone can buy the extra parts from a gun store or online without a firearms license. In the US, 3D printed guns are legal in most states, including Wisconsin, where we've come to meet one of the gun designers who puts those files on the internet.
We see this as freedom of speech. It's an art form.
Ethan Middleton has designed 5 3D printed guns.
This handgun I designed, called the Schnitzel.
His files for making them downloaded thousands of times.
Why put these instructions on the internet?
I think these types of things being out in the public help responsible adults and responsibly armed people stay responsibly armed, whether the government thinks that they should be able to or not.
Do you get messages from Canadians about this?
I do, yeah. There's a couple of dudes who message basically just looking at the files saying, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing, but they make it clear that they're not manufacturing them themselves. Then you do have some people who are totally not, wink wink, manufacturing these. I would assume that these people aren't bringing these firearms out in public to like shooting ranges and stuff like that, but...
It's hard to know.
Correct, yeah, who knows?
Do you ever worry about one of your files with your instructions getting into the hands of someone who might then use the gun to commit a violent crime?
If something were to happen with one of my firearms and innocent lives were lost, that would really suck. But the real situation of that is, if it's not my design, it's gonna be someone else's. We just got the filament set. We'll get the files ready to get sent over, and then we'll hit print.
Remember this? This gun took about 7 hours to print. We sped up the footage.
All right, so the print finished overnight. The Schnitzel Glock 19 9mm handgun. Now we were able to print this pretty quickly because this machine's really fancy and really expensive, but traditionally this print would have taken around 30 hours.
It's just crazy, like that wire, it looks just like wire, becomes this gun.
It takes Ethan about 40 minutes to fit the metal pieces into the plastic frame.
Springs, pins, and stuff like that. There's always post-processing, things that need to be done to make it functional. That is a completed, essentially, Glock 19.
Then we go with Ethan to see if it actually works.
So we're gonna be shooting into this pile of wood here.
All right.
All right, here we go.
And there it is, a brand new firearm, completely under the radar.
So it reset, everything looks good to me. The weapon is still live, so no one's gonna be allowed in front of the muzzle. Guns are potentially dangerous tools. They need to be respected.
In Canada, the past year has seen headline after headline after headline. Stories about alleged 3D printed gun manufacturing rings and weapons being seized. But how many are not? In Toronto, we ask Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino why the government hasn't done more sooner to get ahead of this rise.
It's so easy to find the files that you would need to make the guns online. It's easy to go out there and get a 3D printer. It just seems like the train has already left the station with this problem.
Well, I think we can stop the train in its tracks. It isn't just the ability to access the 3D technology, although that's one part of it, but to then use that technology or that software for the purpose of manufacturing a component or a ghost gun in its entirety is something that we are actively exploring as a potential legislative response to the problem.
This is technology that is new, but it has been around for a few years. Why haven't you done more sooner to stop this?
Well, we've been active. We put in place a national ban on assault-style rifles. We put in place a national handgun freeze.
3D printed guns specifically.
And we have a plan in place to deal specifically with ghost guns, which does involve more investments in law enforcement, expanding our legislative toolkit, a robust collaboration with the United States, and sending a strong message to criminals that if you think you're going to use ghost guns to get away with it, you're wrong.
But with so much information already out there, the parts and printers so accessible, the threat of 3D printed guns is likely to grow.
3D printing is definitely one on the rise in there. And then as the technology gets better, it's going to make it easier.
How big of a challenge do you see this becoming?
I wasn't a big proponent of putting a lot of resources into 3D printed guns here in Calgary because we just didn't see them. We're seeing this uptick in 2022, so who knows what 2023 is going to bring.
Your 7-day forecast and daily lift are still ahead. We'll be right back.
This mild weather streak continues in Winnipeg, looking for just a light dusting of snow overnight tonight, -7 tomorrow as our daytime high. And it looks as if we might see a little bit of sunshine Thursday and Friday, and then back to lots of cloud.
-3.
So warm.
So warm.
Janet, we had to do the daily lift. A ship literally carrying thousands of stories has just docked in Egypt.
A floating bookmobile is your daily lift. Lagos Hope is the largest floating international book fair, and it recently pulled into Port Said. It's operated by a nonprofit organization in Germany with a mission of promoting knowledge and diversity. Volunteer crew members from dozens of nations welcome people on board for a cultural exchange. The ship itself offers about 5,000 different titles, both in Arabic and in English.
Well, that's pretty cool. Reading and having a float. Does the boat float?
Of course the boat floats. It moves from port to port to port. It's been to like
cool.
150 different countries or
That's
something.
very cool.
We got to float.
Yes, we got to float.
See you tomorrow.
Have a good night.